Hello and welcome to this press briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I am Jonathan Beck, Director of Content. Overnight, unofficial reports started emerging that the IDF has entered Gaza in large forces, and this morning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed when he said intense military activity in Gaza City has begun. We're talking about the metropolitan in the center of the Gaza Strip, the capital, and nearly the last part of the entire territory in which the Israeli military did not operate until now. Our guest today is Brigadier General in Reserves, Danny Van Buren. He served as Chief Reservists Officer, and previously he served in various command roles in the Armored Corps. He was a platoon commander, a battalion commander, and a brigade commander. He also is a lawyer, a certified lawyer and jurist by education, a new member of the IDSF, Israel's Defense and Security Forum. On a different sphere with his wife, Racheli is the founder of a startup company that specializes in producing educational games for children. Hello, Danny, and thank you for joining us this afternoon and giving us of your time.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So the operation is officially titled Gideon's Chariots 2, and it started, I'm guessing it started before the weekend, in fact. Today, we heard, we saw the images of the towers being collapsed. Today, we got an official number, 850 targets in the preliminary part of the offensive. And today we have reports also from the ground via, Palestinian media and Telegram, etc., of tanks already in the streets. What can we expect to see regarding the military activity in the coming few days or coming week in Gaza City?
This operation is unfolding as we speak, because some of the information is not really known yet, as the IDFs, and I think they're doing it correctly. They're not releasing the exact locations of the forces and what the next goals should be within the coming days. But I think we should expect to see some ground operations in terms of the IDF taking over parts of the Gaza neighborhoods. First of all, above the ground, and then you have, as you were aware of, there is a major underground city the size of London, or maybe larger, which we should be able to take over and to clear all the the infrastructures and the terrorists that are hiding inside it. And there is a possibility, of course, that the hostages are either underground or above the ground. This is something, I think, that one advantage of this operation is the fact that you can get a real-time intelligence while operating in the area where hostages are located. Naturally, there is a chance that, or there is a risk of hurting the hostages. We all hope that this won't happen. But I think one of the major advantages of being able to be on the grounds at the same location where hostages are located is the possibility to get an online intelligence, which could lead to the IDF's ability to actually release the hostages, or some of them.
Okay, do you, going to that point about the hostages, this phase of the operation is different, obviously, because I don't know to what extent the IDF is sure that hostages are nowhere else, but it's assuming that they're held in those areas. Is the actual, let's call it the tactical activity, the nature of the activity, which I'm guessing that after 2 years, the Israeli army is well rehearsed after Rafah, after Khan Yunis, is it still going to be different this time because of the presence, the assumed presence of the hostages? And let me ask you, do you think there is actually a risk of Hamas hurting the hostages? I know it's an argument that happens in Israel.
Yeah, I think I'll start with your last question, and there is always a risk. You cannot always go inside the heads of these terrorists and the way they are thinking, which is completely different than the Western logics, and as we are all aware of. But I think I can go back to an interview that was given to the press by Eyal Tzir Cohen, was a member of the Mossad and headed part of the negotiations in Doha with Hamas. He mentioned that I think that Hamas is not motivated by revenge, but they are motivated by survival. So as we are well aware of, I think Hamas' best insurance are the hostages. and in case, God forbid, they will try to hurt the hostages, they will lose their insurance, and they will, the IDF will have no limits in doing its operation. So, as my best guess would be that Hamas will keep the hostages as safe as they can, because they are the only option of surviving these attacks. And I think the IDFs can offer them eventually, if we are not successful in releasing them in military options or means. The IDF could suggest the Hamas the ability to be evacuated from Gaza to abroad, and to give up their weapons and give up their the governing of Gaza Strip, and also maybe get some terrorists back from the Israeli jails. But releasing the hostages could be their their safe passage outside of Gaza, and this is what we are aiming for.
Okay. By the way, I think it has a precedent, right? I mean, I know that there have been Hamas members that basically made deals, so to speak, in the past few weeks and months. I think I read something like that on the Telegram channel, but I'm not sure if it's true. Can you say, is any plan for the day after, you think, involved in this phase of the operation, or is the IDF going to be kind of policing Gaza City after it takes over the town?
This is maybe the $1 million question, $1 million question, because everybody is talking about the day after Hamas, and nobody knows what's going to happen. And I always claim that the ability to create a real governance of the Gaza Strip that can hold for a long time goes through the medium, or the first stage, where the IDF is going to take control also of replacing Hamas, as supplying the population with foods, elementary needs, and so on. And because no Arab nation or no international force will replace Hamas, because they will be pointed as the if, for example, we're talking about the Emirates or whatever, Egypt or so on, they won't be they don't want to be pointed as the country or the entity that took over the Gaza from Hamas hands. So there should be a midterm where the IDF will take over Gaza, and then will be in a position to hand it over to an international force or any other entity that will be, I guess, would be in cooperation with the United States. Will have to replace it later on. So I think there should be some temporary arrangement where the IDF will take control of Gaza, in order for us to be able to to move it to transfer it to another entity.
Okay, thank you for this very much. Let me ask you, do you know what remains after Gaza City? Are there other areas in the Gaza Strip that the IDF has not yet been in?
I think the IDF claims that there are two areas where it didn't create, seriously did some ground operation or maneuvers. One of them is the Gaza City, and the center, and the other is the center refugee camps, Nusrat, Muazi, Burej, and so on. These are the areas which initially we were under the idea that hostages are being held in. And this is the reason that we didn't did any ground maneuvers over there.
Do you think it would be necessary? I mean, essentially, in a sense, Gaza City is, there's been an argument in Israel which it veers to political aspects, and I don't want to touch on it too much because I would really like to limit the conversation to the actual military aspect of this. But they're talking about like the forever war, etc. Isn't, by common sense, Gaza City basically like the last stronghold? There's no, after Gaza City is the sea.
Yeah. So
by definition, this should be the last leg of the war, right?
Yes. So I claim, because I think that it's not only a war about taking over the last terrorist, which we want to, and you don't have to be present in any street of the Gaza City or in any neighborhood. Finally, you have to create the story, and this is not only about creating, destroying the full Hamas capabilities, because initially something will remain there. And a single terrorist could always in the future do some damage to Israeli forces. But I think that the battle is also a battle for a narrative, and we should really change the paradigm that was held so far, in terms of terrorists Hamas was under the impression that they can attack Israel, that they can create a serious damage, and that terror pays off. And I think the battle for us is to create a narrative that nobody can gain from attacking or taking out attacks such as October 7. It's all the other Israeli enemies are watching from aside. Iran is watching what will be the outcome of the Gaza operation, and also Hamas in Judea and Samaria is watching. And if we want end this war in a decisive victory, then we are subject to potential damage at the same time, such as October 7 in Judea and Samaria and elsewhere. So as I mentioned before, this is also a battle of narratives.
Okay, so really segueing from what you just said, we have I'm going to combine here a question from two journalists on the line. One is Netanyahu said that this is a decisive battle to fight against Hamas. So why is this different? She asked. I think you partially answered that. And another question from a Swiss outlet is, the Israeli government says it wants to defeat one of the last Hamas strongholds in Gaza City. Are there other means than military action?
I think we were trying so far to combine, diplomatic efforts, negotiations, and military means. And part of the reason that the war is lasting for so long, for 2 years, almost 2 years now, is the fact that I think Israel gave the most chances for negotiations, whether it was in Doha, in Cairo, or elsewhere, for Hamas to come to terms with us in order, by the basic terms of the Israeli security needs, meaning that it will not govern Gaza anymore, it will be disarmed, and release the whole of the hostages. And so far, I think also whether it was the Democratic administration or Trump administration, they all came to the conclusion that Hamas is not willing to give up all the hostages, and the negotiations will not lead us to be able to finish this war entirely. So we need to combine currently this operation. So eventually, it's either we defeat Hamas and release the hostages, or they will come to terms or to the understanding that there is no other options but releasing the hostages, going out of power, and giving away the Gaza Strip to some other entity, initially to the IDF, and then for some international force that's going to take over Gaza. For us, for Israelis, there is no option that when this war ends, Hamas will stay in Gaza as the ruler, as an organization that can create another massive attack on Israel. This is not an option.
Okay. Do you know if the army is? I'm assuming Hamas's main, capability now, since militarily it cannot defeat the IDF. Its main power is basically to set up IEDs and launch attacks that are mainly meant to change the public discourse in Israel.
Sure.
Is the IDF preparing for these? Usually kind of, I don't know, they look stupid in retrospect, the way these things happen. And there are lessons that should have been learned about these things by now. So, for example, over the past few days before the ground troops came in, do you know if the military is preparing for these scenarios?
If I understand correctly, the question, you meant that is the IDF prepared for a situation or for a scenario where Hamas will try to, to create another inner conflict in Israel, or
by this, is the IDF doing what it can to prevent, the simple hard disk magnet bombs that are put on the side of an APC, the stupid bombs that on occasion get, to avoid those situations on occasion, like a priori, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think part of the reason that we were witnessing the major attacks on for Air Force attacks on high buildings in Gaza, and the fact that it's going on for, I think, 2 weeks or more for now, the attacks that are not committed by ground operations, is the IDF doesn't want to suffer more casualties. I think we are well aware that Hamas tries to both create an inner conflict within the Israeli society, and is very aware of the fact that we are very sensitive to human lives. So any loss of soldiers or hostages would create some massive turbulence within the Israeli society. So this is the IDF is taking the operation currently step by step in order to avoid casualties, also of the Gazan population. We don't want to any casualties within Gazans, which are not Hamas activists. So this is the reason it's taking a lot of time. We're taking it step by step. We're trying to evacuate the entire population to the southern part of the Gaza Strip in order to avoid any casualties of civilians.
And I understand also there's parallel efforts of basically moving humanitarian goods and aid to the south, so that there's both an incentive and enough aid for these people to get, right? I just read this today that it's a kind of a two-winged strategy of also pushing this population to the south, the civilian population, and accepting them in the south in a new, wider humanitarian zone.
Yeah, I think one of the basic objectives of this operation currently in the Gaza City is to separating the population, or to push it to the south, as you mentioned, in order to as far as we can, to create a combat zone which is only populated by Hamas activists. And this is part of the reason that we're doing what we're doing, both supplying humanitarian needs and aid in massive numbers to the south, and creating the military maneuvers in order to explain to the local population that they're better off going to the south and leave Hamas to fight the IDF, so they won't be hurt, and they can be well supplied in the humanitarian zones.
Okay, I want to devote just a couple of minutes first of all to debunk it's been reported, and I know we have serious journalists on the line, but I just what's her name? Albanese, the UN rapporteur. So she made some claim about the IDF using unconventional weapons. Can you explain to us why this doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. I've been in the IDF for 25 years, and I think that something that is very obvious to any IDF commander and soldier, that the IDF, we so to speak call ourselves the most moral army in the world, because we emphasize to the soldiers that human lives should be respected, both of your enemy, or naturally, enemy population. We never use anything which is, unconventional weapon. We don't have them, besides, major weapons that are being reported by foreign media. But what the IDF is doing on the grounds is using both the abilities of the Air Force and the conventional warfare of infantry and armored forces. There isn't any device or any ammunition which is unconventional that is being used or haven't been used by the IDF.
Okay, I have a last question I want to refer to. Do you know if the attack in Qatar last week, everyone knew about the coming Gaza offensive for a couple of months now. Everyone in Israel, the reservists got their the call-ups, etc. The Qatar thing came kind of as a surprise. Do you know if it's a separate kind of ad hoc decision, or this all comes together? Because What do you have to say on that, basically?
I think, you know, sometimes it's simple as that you have the opportunity. Naturally, we think that Hamas activists and naturally their leaders shouldn't exist because they are the ones that are planning genocide on the Jewish people, and they are the ones that committed and planned the October 7th. So coming back to Doha, I think that we came to the understanding that some of their leaders, especially the ones that are living abroad, not witnessing what's going on the grounds on Gaza, are being an obstacle to be able to create any hostage deal to eventually finish this war. And I think that we are trying to emphasize by this activity that there is nowhere that they could hide and being, you know, respected in 5-star hotel, as they are, and they should be pointed out as the ones they are, which means they are major terrorists that should face their death as soon as possible. And I think we were just to do so. Nobody knows exactly what was the outcome currently, and naturally there is an issue with the fact that Qatar is an ally of the United States. But I think Qatar also is a nation that should be pointed out as the one who is exporting terrorism and, you know, helping and financing the Hamas, and they should be condemned for this.
Okay, I have another question here from the press. Do you know, the IDF says there's an 80% call-up level, which is high. So can you say how come?
So could you come again?
The IDF says there's an 80% call-up level, meaning units are not, you know, are not shy of reservists coming to fight. I mean,
yeah, I've been in the reserves for almost 20 years and eventually became the Chief Reservists Officer. And I think this is something which is unique for the Israeli army. You know, you see all over the world, you see pictures or videos from Ukraine where they try to draft people and people are escaping the country not to take part of the war. And in Israel, once we are in times of needs, you see reservists come from abroad, leaving their studies or leaving their homes where they live outside of Israel, and coming back to draft to the army to take part of this necessary war. Currently, people who serve in the reserves, combat soldiers, have been serving for sometimes 300, 400, or 500 days during the last 2 years or so. This creates a major burden on their civilian lives, on their families, and so on their ability to work and to study, and so on. So naturally, there is a burden on these soldiers, but as we see now, almost 100%, sometimes more, from the units were called upon and came to do their duties. Naturally, the local commanders are more flexible in terms of helping these soldiers, maybe, you know, do some rotation between them and so on. But there is, I talked to one of my colleagues, one of my fellows, who is a regiment commander currently in Gaza. All of his regiment, all of his soldiers came upon and they are willing to finish this war because they really understand the meaning of defeating Hamas and releasing the hostages. Okay,
I understand. Thank you very much, Brigadier General Danny Van Buren. I very much appreciate this call. This is always, this will be on our YouTube channel. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali Naor, for producing this. I often forget to thank her, so whenever I don't mention anyone, it's Ali. So thank you, Ali. I remember this time. And that's it from me at the Jerusalem Press Club for today. Thank you very much.